If you're not new here to the channel, you will know that we are no strangers to the e-bike company that is Engwe. And Engwe have sent me yet another e-bike to test ride and review. This time round we've got a fat tyre, dual battery, stylish cafe racer type e-bike. So without further ado, let's get this bike out the box and take a look at what we're going to be riding today. Let's do it. So now with the bike out the box, we can start taking a look at this Engwe M20 and the things we need to do in order to get it built. As always, Engwe packaged the bike incredibly well, but as always, they do give you a few extras that need to be fitted to the bike upon delivery. Although we're saying that, this bike seems to have the least amount of extras that you need to fit onto the bike once it has been unboxed. So let's take a look at what this bike comes with and what we need to do to get it in a riding order. So for a start, we've got a front mud guard. It also comes with a kickstand that we've got to get on the bike. It also comes with a dual headlight that's going to go on the front of the bike. Hopefully this thing's going to look incredible. Of course, you've got your battery charger and cable for the battery charger. The output of this charger is 54.6 volts at 2.5 amps max, so this is going to be quite a slow charger. We then get an extra box of goodies which includes a user's manual, some pedals to go on the bike, the front axle for putting the front wheel on, the toolkit that Engwe always includes with all of their bikes, which comes with everything you need to put the bike together. Looks like we've got a few stickers that are optional extras that we can put on, and then we also have two plastic caps which are going to go over the front wheel axle once it has been installed. So without further ado, let's start getting this bike built so we can get it on the road and give it a test ride. So that is now the Engwe M20 all built up from out of the box. The build time on this was approximately 30 minutes. For somebody with no experience in building bikes before, this may take you an hour, but it was a really simple job. There was only a handful of bits to actually throw on the bike and they were really self-explanatory. We have still got one battery on charge, so while the other battery is charging, let's take a look at some of the features that come along with this cafe racer stylish looking e-bike. The Engwe M20 features a 750 watt brushless hub motor which can provide 55 Newton meters of torque. This specific model has batteries with 48 volts and 13 amp hours per battery. That means 26 amp hours overall when combining the two batteries together. These batteries are capable of doing 35 kilometers using just the throttle. With the pedal assist at level 1, it will do 75 kilometers. I think these numbers then double when combining the batteries together, so that would be 70 kilometers throttle only, and that would be 150 kilometers of pedal assist at level 1. The bike also features 160mm front and rear disc brakes, but these are not hydraulic, they are cable brakes. The bike also features a reputable Shimano 7-gear system. This bike, when using only one battery, is 35 kilograms in weight. When combining with two batteries, it then goes up to 46 kilograms, which is still incredibly light for a bike like this. The Engwe M20 also features dual suspension, so you do have suspension forks at the front with a compression adjustment at the top, making for a smooth and a bump-free ride. You also do have an air shock at the back of the bike. This is a HLT 100 shock. I do believe these are budget shocks, but will be absolutely perfect for this style of bike and the terrains that we're going to be riding on. We also can't ignore the fact that the Engwe M20 has these big 20-inch big fat tyres ready for all sorts of terrains, whether it be on-road, off-road, bumpy or smooth. These are going to ensure for a comfortable ride no matter what. Then we also can't leave out the features of the front headlight with the dual headlight, which makes the bike look mean and aggressive at the front, as well as these BMX style handlebars, which again are a really trendy and stylish touch to this Engwe M20. The handlebars are something that I love on this bike. So now we've got the bike built and all of the features have been gone through. The only thing left to do is stick in that second battery and get riding this Engwe M20. So we are now out and about on the Engwe M20, and it is nearly time to give this bike a proper test ride. But before we do, let's take a look at the cockpit and see what controls we've got at the handlebars. So up on the handlebars, we've got the back brake on the right and the front brake on the left. It's important to remember that on the Engways, they always come backwards to what we are normally used to. I'm always used to having the back brake on the left, but they come on the right on the Engways. As well as the brakes, we've got a Shimano 7-speed gear system with a plus and then a minus to get us back down through the gears. We've then also got the half twist throttle that comes on the M20, so it's not a full twist throttle and it's not a thumb throttle. I actually prefer this over the thumb throttle. I'm used to twisting throttles, so that is ideal for me. Then on the left hand side, we have got the electrical display, which is looking really nice. We've also got a light button and a horn button. On the display, to turn it on, there's a power button at the top which you press and hold. You will then see the screen will power on. You have a plus and a minus button. These buttons are used to go through the different power speed levels. So you have levels from 0 to 5, 0 being nothing. So if I hit the throttle now, you got nothing. 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest power. Then if you press and hold the plus and the minus button, that is when it will take you into some settings. If I'm honest, I have no idea what these settings do yet. I've not played around with any of them, so I'm going to leave them completely alone for now. But that is how you would get into the menu, and then to get out of the menu, just press and hold the power button. That should take you back to the main screen. Something else I quickly wanted to show you before we got on the bike and give it a ride is these two batteries and how cool they actually are for just simple batteries. On the battery, you have got an off and an on switch, so you can turn the batteries off when they are not on the bike. This should help with the life of the battery, turning it off over time. You then have the charge port, which is this circular port, and then behind this port here, which I probably won't be able to pull out because I've got my gloves on, but there is a USB port behind this rubber flap and this rubber flap. So you actually have two USB ports on this bike, which is awesome. You can use these batteries to power things like a phone charger, camera charger. You can even use it to charge a speaker that you could attach to the bike. With the option of two USBs on this bike, this is mega handy. You could be charging your phone as well as charging your camera, or charging your phone as well as charging the speaker, or powering a different display that is on the bike. So now it's time to finally jump on the bike and give this thing a test ride. I did ride the bike here. I've had a little play, but nowhere near enough to actually give my first impressions or reviews on it. So we're going to be going through everything together. So let's flick the bike up into power mode level 1 and start riding. Now with these Engwe bikes, the other ones that I've tried, or the Engine Pro that I tried that had the throttle with the pedals, I actually found it really nice to start off using the twist throttle or the thumb throttle in the Engine Pro's case, and then go into pedaling. I found this was the best way to get started, as there is a slight delay from when you start pedaling to when the hub motor actually kicks in. So we're going to put it into power mode level 3 now, just to get up this bit of a hill that's in front of us. This Engwe M20 is capable of going up hills with just the throttle, a 10-degree incline. But if you're using the actual pedals, it will climb up hills pretty well. I mean, I'm in power mode level 3, just going to drop it down a couple of gears to keep us going. And so while we carry on this ride, let's start talking about the features of this bike. And the looks of the bike is the first thing that I wanted to talk about. I know I've already talked about the looks of the bike, but I just think this bike is extremely cool looking for what it is. I feel the fact it looks like a little cafe racer type bike is really cool. It actually does look like a little motorcycle, but obviously not too much. You can still tell that it is obviously a pedal bike, but I also feel like the double batteries add to that sort of motorbike look and motorbike feel. I feel like having the double battery almost looks like a sort of petrol tank on the top of the bike. And then as well as the double battery that I like the looks of the headlight. I feel like the headlight makes it look more like a cafe racer slash sort of motorcycle type e-bike, push bike. And I like the handlebars as well. I know I talked about the handlebars before, but I like the handlebars because they're more BMX style. I found some of the other handlebars, like the ones on the Engine Pro, where they're on a straight stem going up and then they're almost flat. I found that a bit of a strange riding position and a bit too sort of upright and tall, whereas with these handlebars you feel like you've got a lot more control. You feel like you're a lot more of a nicer riding position. So for the looks of the bike, these things are my favourite things: the handlebars, the headlight, and then the double batteries. And as well as liking the looks of the double battery, I actually really like the positioning of the double battery. Engwe do make a single battery version of this bike, so you can buy one with just the one battery, or you can buy one with the two batteries. The second battery being this one that sits up in between your legs. And the reason that I like the positioning of this battery so much, I'm not too bothered about the other battery down there. It's hidden away in where you would find most e-bike batteries, but this other one that's in between your legs is actually really nicely positioned, because it acts as almost a grabbing point for your legs. As I'm so used to riding the Sur-on and riding bigger bikes with something in between to grasp your legs on, having that feature to actually grab that battery with your legs when you're not pedaling is actually really nice. And while we're on the subject of the bike handling this really well, let's actually talk about the performance of this bike. And we're going to start off with the hub motor itself. So the hub motor itself is rated as a 750 watt motor, but like the other Engways, it is actually possible of pushing a bit more power out of that. So although it's rated for 750 watts, you can expect to get 1000 watts, if not actually a bit more. I found with the Engine Pro, again, that was for a start rated with a 750 watt motor, but I found when I was riding it on the display, it was showing me well over 1000 watts when I was putting in some good leg work on the pedal assist. So if you really go for it, you will actually pull over 750 watts of power. But obviously with that 750 watts of power, you are making this bike non-street legal, so we are going to have to stay off the streets and stick to the trails and the off-road places today. So on top of the 750 watt motor, we have got these double batteries, which I've talked a lot about already, but what we haven't talked about with the batteries is the voltage and the amp hours. And with the voltage, these are 48 volt batteries. There is 2 of them. The voltage does not double. There is no more voltage just because you have 2 batteries. The voltage will remain at 48 volts. However, with the double battery, if you're at 13 amp hours with 1 battery and you have 2 of them, you can then double it. So technically this bike is now a 26 amp hour bike. So with the double battery, you get the double range, and for the double battery version of this bike, it is not much more expensive. And I really do advise that if you're going to get this bike, opt for that double battery, just because of the looks, the performance and the range. It is advertised that with this bike, if you only use that twist throttle in any of the power modes, presumably power mode level 1 being the lowest power mode, you will only get 21 miles, which isn't a great deal of mileage really. It's definitely not a long range bike if that, but I'm actually not certain if this is for the double battery or the single battery version. If it's for the single battery version, then you could actually say that that range will double again, so you'd get 42 miles just using the twist throttle with the double battery version, which would be a lot better than the 21 miles obviously, but 41 miles alone using the twist throttle isn't the best, isn't the worst. It's not a long range bike, put it that way. So now we've got all of the techie information out of the way, we can finally talk about how this bike and how it's performing down on this canal path trail. So these Engwe M20s are made for light off-road use. With the double suspension and the fat tyres, you can tell that they are built to handle a bit of a bumpy ride. And actually so far this bike has handled everything incredibly. As you can see, there's tree roots and all sorts sticking out along this path, and with the help of the big fat tyres and the help of the dual suspension front and rear, it is helping me out massively along this trail, and it is making for a really comfortable ride. I feel this bike, compared to the Engwe Engine Pro that I actually tried in a previous video, handles and rides a lot nicer. I prefer the riding position of this bike. I prefer, like I spoke about earlier, how the handlebars are. I feel like I've got more control over the front end of the bike rather than it being a bit rickety and a bit wobbly at the front. But again, these bikes are built for different purposes. The M20 is built for a different purpose than the Engine Pro, although similar bikes in similar ways, but yeah, built for different purposes. With the shock on the rear of the bike, it is an air shock. I actually do feel like this is slightly too hard for my liking at the minute. I imagine there'll be a way to adjust it, let some air out and make it a little bit softer. I personally would like it that little bit softer for riding these sorts of trails and tracks. Engwe might make the rear shock super hard just for delivery purposes, and then the rider or the customer can then go ahead and tweak that to their own preferences. As soon as I've been riding mostly using these pedals, I'm actually going to switch and I'm going to go across to using just the twist throttle. And like I say, we are in power mode level 3 still. With the twist throttle, I'm absolutely flat out right now. Can't go any more on it. We're at 31/32 kilometers an hour, which again for level 3 isn't too bad at all, and is plenty of speed and plenty of power for me to be riding down here on this sort of bike. So just purely out of interest, I'm going to bump the power into level 5. So we're now in power assist level 5, which is going to be the most power we can get, and I'm going to hit the twist throttle. I can feel us picking up quite a bit of speed now. I'm not going to go too ridiculous because I really don't want to end up in that water, but she's carrying on up to 35 kilometers an hour currently, so we are gaining quite a bit of speed down here, and it's handling it beautifully. It's actually really nice. We're getting up to nearly 40 kilometers an hour right now. 38, sitting at 38. But again, the bike's handling it really well. That front suspension is handling so much more than I thought it might. The brakes do need bedding in slightly, but while we're on the subject of brakes, these are cable brakes instead of hydraulic brakes, and personally I'm not a huge fan of the cable brakes for a few reasons. I feel like the hydraulic brakes perform a hell of a lot better. Even with the hydraulic brakes, there's not so much need to actually bed in the rotors and the pads. Obviously they will still need bedding in, but because there is so much power with the hydraulic brakes on the actual pistons pushing the brake pads in, you can still manage to stop. But with these cable brakes, they've not quite got the stopping power unless you really grab to stop the bike. Although on this bike there is enough stopping power without those hydraulic brakes, I would like to see Engwe just take it up a notch and stick the hydraulic brakes on. I know they probably cost that little bit more, but pass the cost on to the customer, get the customer to pay that little bit more, and they will be happier with hydraulic brakes. So one of my complaints about this bike is actually the cable brakes. Over time the cables will stretch on the brakes as well. You do have adjustments on the levers to help with this, so you can adjust it out so when the cable does stretch, the biting point is at a different point, so you can still use the brakes. But again, over time you are going to have to adjust that. So as well as improving these cable brakes that come on the Engwe M20, the only other thing I can pick out that I would like to change about this bike is actually the seat position. And I am actually a huge fan of the seat on this bike. I feel like going for a motorcycle style seat with it being a wider, more flat pad of actual foam to sit on. The angle of the seat on this bike is really awkward. I feel like they've probably put the angle like this to actually help with the looks of the bike and make it look more pleasing to the eye, but realistically and performance wise it could actually do with being not quite so tilted far forwards. With the seat being tilted forwards like it is and going over this rough terrain, it's constantly wanting to throw me towards that battery, which isn't in the best position if you were to fly forwards and actually hit the battery. So with the cable brakes and the seat being in a dodgy position, those are my two sort of main complaints about the Engwe M20 and things that personally I would change going forwards in the future if it was me selling this bike. So overall, I'm really happy with how the Engwe M20 has performed on this test ride. My first impressions are that this bike is brilliant. Again, there is a couple of things I'd like to change on the bike, but nothing is ever perfect. If you are interested in taking a look at the Engwe M20 for yourself, the link to the website will be down below in the description of this video, along with any discount codes that I can provide for the M20 or any other of the Engways. All of the links will be down below in the description. If you are new here to the channel, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, and if you've liked watching this video, drop a comment down below and leave a like. With all that being said and done, I'm Matt Francis signing out. Peace.